This video is kind of the part 3 to a 3-part series, so make sure you watch the last 2 videos if you have not. The first video specifically lays a little bit more information that I think informs you as to why it's related. I'm not really going to spend the time now to go over that again, but I'm sure you can kind of figure it out just based on the title of the video. So quick disclaimer about that though. If you are involved in this scene, if you are a genuine fan of this band, then a lot of the bands on this list won't surprise you that they're still together. Kind of the requirement for fitting into the category for this video was more of they were huge at one point, or they were much bigger than they are and now they're not. So these are all bands that are still very active and still do have a hardcore following. They are just not at their prime anymore, maybe. Let's go ahead and get the biggest one out of the way right out of the gate. We got POD. This used to be the band. I haven't checked numbers, but I'm pretty sure they have sold more records than any other Christian rock or metal band. Late 90s, early 2000s, this was the band to be listening to. And they're still around, but no one seems to know that. So what the heck happened? I think a lot of it is that POD has kind of always just sounded like POD. Sure, sometimes from album to album, they lean one way or the other, but they've kind of always been what they are. And there aren't a lot of bands that really do that. Most of the bands that were of that time changed a lot. Think of bands like Papa Roach or Linkin Park. Bands that used to sound like that, but as time went on, they changed with the times. POD never really changed. They just kind of stayed the same, but these guys are alive and kicking. I just saw them a few years ago. They still put on a great live show. The next band on this list might also be one of the bigger ones on here. It is Stryper. Stryper were huge back in the day. This was the kind of band that could play in pretty big venues. To Hell with the Devil went platinum. They were kind of the band that put Christian metal on the map as a relevant, non-joke kind of genre. Now, Stryper did break up and they kind of reunited a couple different times, so sure, that probably didn't help with the buzz, especially since, you know, during the time when social media was really getting up and going, they weren't really doing much, so they didn't get to jump on that train. This next band kind of falls into the category with Stryper as far as missing the social media bus, and that is Living Sacrifice. Living Sacrifice are kind of the band that allowed Christian extreme metal to be what it is today. Started in 1989, broke up in 2002, 2003, somewhere in there, reunited in the late 2000s to go on tour with Demon Hunter on the Storm the Gates of Hell tour. But in that time, heavy metal kind of started becoming accepted into pop culture more. So they missed that, as well as the train of social media becoming huge and becoming a gateway for people to get into more and different kinds of music. However, Living Sacrifice are a great band who are still together. They do play a handful of shows a year. I did just see them live. They've had 2 records since they've reunited. Tons of bands, especially in Christian metal, give a nod to Living Sacrifice for being one of the bands that kind of paved the way for them to do what they are doing. Now, this next band, Impending Doom, I feel like maybe they don't need to be on this list because, quite frankly, most people who like Impending Doom love Impending Doom. However, a lot of fans felt like after them putting out an album every 1 or 2 years and touring nonstop while they were on Face Down and after their next couple records, the gap between Death Will Reign in 2013 and the Sin and Doom Volume 2 in 2018, it wasn't enough substance for how long the wait was, and the band's only playing a few shows a year. However, I am very happy that they have found a balance that works for them, with them able to keep doing Impending Doom and also doing all the other stuff with their lives by having gaps in between records and only playing a handful of shows a year. I'd much rather that than Impending Doom break up. Number 5 on this list is the band that probably gets this mentioned to me more than any other, and that is the Devil Wears Prada. Back in the mid to late 2000s, Devil Wears Prada were like the band. Every Hot Topic kid, every emo kid, every metalcore kid, this was their band, was the Devil Wears Prada. I know tons of people in their mid to late 20s with Devil Wears Prada tattoos, but Prada never broke up. So why is it that whenever I go to buy their newest record, the guy is like, whoa, I had no idea that they're still around? It's because people shifted. A lot of people who used to listen to that kind of music got tired of it being the same all the time, and a lot of them just stopped listening to metalcore at all and now listen to lo-fi and indie and stuff like that. People who didn't jump off just kind of got weirded out by them because after 818, Devil Wears Prada started doing some weird stuff, and they're not at all your traditional metalcore anymore. However, they are still great. They just put out a record called The Act on Solid State Records. Please check it out if you haven't. It is really good. Next on this list is Decipher Down. If you go to the mid-2000s, Decipher Down had 2 really solid records. They had End of Grey in 2006 and Crash in 2009. These were fantastic Christian rock albums. But then they kind of fell off for a while, and then they had a really weird record a few years later, and then they had another record just a few years ago. I am sorry, the names of these records are escaping me. This band still tours pretty much full time though. They're always teasing about writing up some new demos and stuff for future music. So even though that their newer songs don't seem to to get as much attention as those first two records did. They are still making quality records, somehow still able to have Decipher Down as a big part of their income, it seems like. Next on the list is Fireflight. Fireflight kind of fall in the same category where they had their first couple records were huge, and then they've kind of faded off of the radar, which is definitely true. And that's why metalcore and bands that have evolved that and hardcore and is much bigger, it seems. However, Fireflight had a record in 2015, which was pretty good, even though no one seemed to talk about it. And even just last year, they put out 2 singles. This band is still around. They're just not very active. Number 8 on the list is kind of in the same category. It's Nine Lashes. First 2 records were fantastic. Third record, really weird. Huge shift in dynamic. However, they did just have a single, I believe it was last year. Maybe it was the year before. I am really bad about keeping track of time. However, they are kind of seeming like they're going to shift back to their older style of heavy kind of ambient hard rock. It's taken a long time for that to happen. They don't really play shows that much as of right now. It is just something that is eventually happening. Although I feel like Nine Lashes kind of missed their opportunity with how great their first 2 records were. They definitely had an opportunity to be a mainstream rock band, and I definitely feel like they missed that. Number 9 on the list is 12 Stones. We're starting to see a pattern here, right? Like all the bands that were popular in the mid to late 2000s, they kind of drop off. And that's kind of the exact same thing that happened with 12 Stones. And I think a big part of that is the same problem that happened with POD, which is that they just kind of created their sound and then didn't really change it all with the times. They kind of still sound like the late 90s, early 2000s post-grunge stuff. However, they did just have a record in 2017, and it's worth checking out if you haven't already. The last band on this list, number 10, we have Project 86, a staple band for Tooth and Nail. They've had tons of great records. They're another one of the bands that maybe they don't need to be on this list, because I don't think Project 86 was ever huge to begin with, but it definitely seems like they've kind of fallen into obscurity. Last time I really heard any hype for Project 86 was back when Wait for the Sirens was new, and if I remember correctly, that was 2012, so it's definitely been a while, but they have had 2 records since then, and they are really good. They do tour still. They do a great job of keeping their fans updated with stuff going on. If you were a huge fan of them when they were one of the staple Tooth and Nail bands, check out some of their newer stuff. I think part of their problem is that they're a little all over the place. They're kind of hard rock. They're kind of post-hardcore. They're just kind of whatever the heck they feel like it. So thank you for watching this 3-part series that has been in response to so many bands reuniting this year. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the like, leave a comment if you think there's a band I should have mentioned, like the Facebook page, follow the Spotify page, all that great stuff. God bless, and I will see you later.